Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. One of the reasons why Star Wars works so well is the fact that most of the main characters are nameless actors and actresses. I mean, sure, you'll have guys like Alec Guinness or Ewan McGregor in supporting roles as Obi-Wan Kenobi, but the main characters, aka the Skywalker family, are generally nobodies, and so it's much easier to pay attention to the story instead of who is playing them. But when the prequels came out, Mace Windu was played by Samuel L. Jackson. George Lucas actually wanted Tupac Shakur for the role, but he couldn't make it because he went back home. Now, Samuel L. Jackson's fame far eclipsed the unknown Jedi Master at the time. And so I thought it'd be kind of cool today to take a look at the 7 times in which Mace Windu goes full on Samuel L. Jackson in Star Wars. Mace Windu is a man of discipline. He's no nonsense when it comes to rules and procedure. This is how he became the deadliest swordsman in the entire Jedi Order. But a lack of flexibility on the battlefield, especially when fighting against a bunch of soulless droids, can cause some issues and make things a lot more complicated. During the Battle of Ryloth, Mace Windu took part in an assault of the main Separatist assembly plant. After Republic bombers managed to create a hole in the roof of the structure, Mace Windu, Obi-Wan Kenobi, along with several clone jet troopers, breach from this entry point. Now, instead of attacking the droids, Mace Windu does this.
My name is General Mace Windu of the Jedi Order.
I mean, even Obi-Wan Kenobi, who is the master of another really weird Jedi, Anakin Skywalker, is kind of surprised by this.
At this point of the Clone War, I have dismantled and destroyed over 100,000 of you Type 1 battle droids.
Mace Windu isn't even bragging about this right now, he's just stating the facts, like Samuel L. Jackson would.
I'm giving you an opportunity to peacefully lay down your weapons, to serve a better purpose than spreading the mindless violence and chaos which you have inflicted upon the galaxy.
And even gives the battle droids an opportunity to surrender, which of course they don't take. The point is, Mace Windu was more than happy to give up his own element of surprise so that he could properly address the enemy force and convince them to surrender. And he does this to not just any kind of army, but an army full of droids, who I'm pretty sure can't surrender even if they wanted to. There's a reason why Mace Windu acts like this all throughout the Clone Wars and also in the Mandalorian TV show next season. I'm just kidding, I don't know if that's going to happen. But the point is, Mace Windu is a badass, and that's why he's able to do all of this. During the Battle of Dantooine, Master Windu leads the 187th Legion against the droid army 4 times its size. Seeing that his men are outnumbered, Mace Windu does the only logical thing someone like he would do, and that is to try to kill the droids at an even faster rate. But then there's a sudden break in the fighting and the B-2 super battle droids stop engaging and stand at attention. So at this point, a gigantic Separatist ship appears over the battlefield. The clones and Mace Windu watch as this ship slowly blots out the entire sun. Once it's in position, the center of the ship drops out and creates a massive crater in the ground. Anyone directly caught underneath this weapon is instantly pulverized. Then there's the ensuing shockwave, which knocks over anyone else left standing. This is a terrifying weapon, and it does not discriminate. An equal amount of droids and clones are destroyed by it. The clone troopers try to fire at the underside of this gigantic vessel with their small arms, but it's more or less useless. And every time the seismic tank attacks, thousands of more clones die. Now, Mace Windu ends up losing his lightsaber after getting hit by the second seismic wave. When he gets up, he finds himself in the middle of a cluster of droids with nothing but his hands. But that's not really a problem because he has the Force and ridiculous fighting abilities. Mace Windu starts just punching droids into pulp and ripping them apart with his bare hands. And after a while, he's not even punching them physically, he's just punching them with the Force. After getting a few hundred kills, Mace Windu regains a saber and heads towards the seismic tank and takes it out with minimal effort. Most Jedi are men, Mace Windu is a god. During the Battle of Ryloth, Mace Windu decides to take an armored column from a Republic staging point all the way to the Twilight capital of Lesu. Why didn't Mace Windu just transport his tanks on LAATs? Why is Mace Windu positioning his walkers on a sketchy cliffside road that only allows his tank column to travel in single file formation? It's probably the same reason why Mace Windu announces his presence before attacking the droids during the Battle of Anaxis. He's lacking a challenge, and so when his ATTEs come under fire from a group of Separatist armored assault tanks and is disabled, Mace Windu jumps right into action. He saves the injured driver and gets his crew to safety. He then shoves the disabled tank off the road so it doesn't block everyone else's path, and immediately after he calls for a platoon of his finest ARF troopers and leads them in a frontal charge against the enemy tanks on ATRTs. The attack is successful. Mace Windu and his walkers dodge all of the incoming fire and destroy the enemy. Now, had Mace Windu hesitated like a lesser man would, his entire tank column might now be at the bottom of that ravine. Mace Windu had an opportunity to end the entire war right as it was about to begin during the skirmish at Petranaki Arena. All he really needed to do was to penetrate Count Dooku with his purple lightsaber.
You know, milady, Count Dooku was once a Jedi.
Mace Windu, of course, is completely wrong about Count Dooku. He is a monster. And for his arrogance, Mace Windu ends up losing his cape to its only weakness, fire. And he ends up having to fight in the arena with all of the other no-name Jedi who are most likely all going to perish as background fodder. Now, Jango Fett might have gotten a jump on Mace Windu in this scenario, but he's not going to let the bounty hunter get away a second time. Once Jango's jetpack malfunctions, Mace Windu walks right up to the dinosaur-murdering Mandalorian and cuts his head off with one swift move and a nice pose afterwards. When Qui-Gon Jinn, who is basically the exact opposite of Mace Windu, brings forth the idea of the Chosen One in front of the Jedi Council, Mace Windu can hardly contain the furious Samuel L. Jackson inside of him, who's probably going to say something stupid. Mace Windu thinks Qui-Gon Jinn's prophecy is nonsense and a waste of time.
Bring him before us, then.
And so while Mace Windu is testing young Anakin's ability in the Force, you can see him seething with anger, and that's probably because Mace Windu just knows somehow that this little punk is going to be the end of his life one day.
I don't trust him.
The problem with Mace Windu in this scenario is he wasn't Samuel L. Jackson enough to, let's say, pull out his 9/11 and put an end to Anakin before he can turn into a larger monster. We rarely ever get to see images of the fight on the ground during the Battle of Coruscant. A lot of things actually happen. The Separatists swarm the Senate District, and they even manage to capture Chancellor Palpatine. Mace Windu is groundside when the Separatists arrive. He attempts to launch out of the Jedi Temple hangar in his own fighter. Now, Mace Windu is an excellent fighter pilot, but the problem with being a fighter pilot is all that metal gets in the way of his fists. And so eventually he ends up ditching his starfighter and boards a Vulture droid instead, and uses it for aerial dueling. Mace Windu doesn't even fire the main gun on the Vulture, he just manages to get close enough into melee range and starts slicing starfighters open. It's more than a little bit ridiculous, but it's classic Mace Windu. When the Jedi came to arrest Darth Sidious, how did he slay 3 Jedi Masters within just a few seconds? Well, we did a full video on it. And it's less about how good those 3 Jedi Masters were with the blade and more about how freaking unstoppable Mace Windu was. See, generally speaking, Jedi were weaker duelists than Sith, and this was because of their natural light side affinity. The light side heals and grows, and the dark side decays and destroys. The light side creates calm, and the dark side is all about passion. Dark side Force users can use things like Force lightning. They can also squeeze the inside of a person's organs into pulp. There are a lot of ways you can kill people with the Force that light side Force users would never do. Dark side Force power is fueled by anger, which makes the Sith faster and stronger in combat than most Jedi. But there are Jedi, and then there's just Mace Windu. You see, he managed to somehow develop a new form of lightsaber combat known as Form VII Vapaad. Form 7 has long been seen as a dark side lightsaber form, and that's because it requires the user to fully tap into their own dark side and emotions. This creates an extremely chaotic, unpredictable, and powerful lightsaber form. Juyo was the perfect form for a powerful Sith because it usually paired very well with their broken and twisted personalities, like a fine wine with a nice meal. Form 7 wasn't just a lightsaber form. In many ways, it was a state of mind in which anger and hate flowed through the body like electricity. Now, Mace Windu's Vapaad was different and similar from Juyo in that it also channeled the inner darkness inside of the fighter, but instead of absorbing it and letting this darkness ruin the body, Vapaad users just channel that energy and use it to power their own strikes. In other words, like Samuel L. Jackson, Mace Windu is constantly angry and pissed off. But instead of fighting that anger, he embraces it when he needs it for power and speed, but never lets it get to his head. And when Vapaad users go up against dark side Force users, especially Form 7 Juyo duelists, all that dark side energy getting thrown at them is reflected back, which is why Palpatine never even stood a chance. Everyone loves Mace Windu, and that's because he's killed all of the Star Wars fans who don't like him. And that's what makes him such a cool character. I mean, he doesn't really belong in the Jedi because he's so extreme, but somehow he makes it work. Now let me know in the comment section below what you think about Mace Windu. Again, remember, don't write anything negative. I don't want my YouTube page to get, killed by Mace Windu. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. And as usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.